And this month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by Super Inframan Allison Cook and Eric Hervin. Thank you all so very much for your incredible support.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? Tonight I am joined by Red Pill Junky.
Los marcianos llegaron ya.
And Joshua
llegaron
Cutchin.
bailando el ricacha.
Hi, Josh.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here.
So Miguel sang, are you going to play some tuba now?
No. It's a famous, very old Mexican song about how the Martians finally came down.
Oh.
That's cha-cha.
well, yeah. The government has now announced that there are aliens and they're here and they're hostile and we're going to have to fight them.
Well, not exactly, but
oh, was I at least close?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
I was just going to get this out of the gate. I didn't want to record any sort of follow-up to what we just did because I know that there has been an article in the New York Times about what's going to be coming out in this report. And I know that the immediate response to us saying, I told you so, is going to be like, well, it's not out yet. And while that's true, I know that's going to be the response. So I kind of didn't want to do this. So I'm going on the record saying I didn't want to do this.
Well, we're not doing a whole show on it, but it's something we should comment on because we did do a show on it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we were really off on anything.
No, I think that if I remember correctly, what I think I said was I was expecting the report to say something over the effect of there's reasons to believe there's been incursions of maybe drones, maybe possibly operated by foreign adversaries, and therefore there's a need for more cooperations between different branches of government, strengthening capabilities, yada, 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 and maybe a few paragraphs saying, oh, by the way, and there are some of those cases remain unidentified, and we don't know what they are.
Right.
Which is pretty much what people should have expected. I mean, how could the government, how could any, organization, how could anyone categorically say, yeah, these are extraterrestrials coming from other planets? I mean, the only way you can do that is by, having sensors from here to Alpha Centauri,
right.
And determine, okay, yeah, this particular, spacecraft came from Alpha Centauri, so we now, know their provenance is interplanetary. Now, on the other hand, I think what other people were expecting to hear is that the government will have undisputable proof that these objects represent technology that is far beyond the capabilities of both of not only the United States but also other governments in the world. And for some reason, that is not the case. So maybe, and this is something that people like Chris Mellon or something are trying to spin the New York Times article and say, well, maybe there's things that they're still remaining undisclosed. Maybe the task force didn't do such a good job, finding the information. But maybe this is the end result of the ambiguity that is so characteristic the UFO phenomenon, of that is so vague, so elusive. I guess it's the word I'm trying to utilize, which leaves so much room open to uncertainty. And on the one hand, it's kind of comforting to see how the United States government has been humbled or humiliated once again by the UFO phenomenon by saying, yeah, we don't know what this is going on. And this is, I guess, what many of us were thinking that was the true reason behind the cover-up, right? It's not that these guys have, secret pacts with aliens and underground bases and all that jazz. It's that what they were really trying to hide is the fact that they, after 70 years, they still don't know what the F is going on.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, and it suggests that they aren't as powerful as a lot of us assume they are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we've also kind of seen that in the last couple of years when we've seen all these failures of things. Like it's become more and more apparent how incompetent the government really is.
Yeah.
The government is not run by super smart people who know everything. They're not like our, like a kid looks at their parents. They're just fallible people, and a lot of times not even the best people. They're the people who just want power.
Yeah. They're people who are following a career in government. I want to think that many have, call to service. Patriotic sentiments, a desire to serve their country, to be part of something bigger than they are, all of that. But then they're also that people who want to have, lives, careers, and after that, having a nice retirement and go about their lives, and if they encounter something so anti-structure as the UFO phenomenon, and is confronted with something that is by definition, very rigid, very bureaucratic, very structure prone, I guess most of those individuals will scratch their heads and say, well, I mean, as long as they're not invading, let's go about business. And just forget about it. And maybe, these things will leave us alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, you don't want being in that view of, oh, we're all powerful, we're the government. You don't want to admit, oh, we don't know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, let's not admit how much we spent on this boondoggle of a project of trying to determine what these things are, just to turn around and say, yeah, we still don't know. Can we have more money?
Yeah, and also there's this idea that we don't know what they are, and maybe we could, try to establish some kind of international cooperation to see that maybe the whole world united to try to figure this out, but there is zero inclination to do so.
Yeah.
Even among the people who are not only convinced that the UFO phenomenon is real, but also they are utterly convinced, for whatever reason, that the United States government not only knows more about the UFO phenomenon that they care to admit, but also that they also possess alleged physical materials,
right?
Of alien origin, let's call it. And like, for example, last weekend I participated in the SCU virtual conference. The SCU is this scientific coalition for the study of UAPs. They used to call them UFOs, but I guess they changed to the HEAP acronym to stay with the times. and the keynote speaker was Dr. Harold Putoff. who is a very controversial figure. We all know his relationship with Robert Bigelow, with NITS, the study of the Skinwalker Ranch, and before that with Seriah, and the remote viewing program. And after that, when he partnered with Tom DeLonge in the founding of the To the Stars Academy of Science. Okay, so this guy, we know for a fact that he believes that aliens are here, right? And we also know that he thinks, or he believes, maybe he cannot prove, that the government has something, whether a whole or just like the I don't know, the wheel or the ashtray, something. They have something that maybe, probably, maybe, possibly, or perhaps came from a UFO, and somebody during the conference asked him, do you think that somebody has one or two craft stores somewhere? And he vaguely say, I cannot comment on that. But at the same time, when they ask him, hey, what do you think about this idea, and obviously we'll continue talking about this maybe further on, about that NASA or the head of NASA says that he is giving permission to their scientists to study UFOs. And he said, well, one of the things that NASA could do is some kind of project to store materials. So okay, so you can't comment on that. On the other hand, you want NASA to analyze UFO fragments. So
right.
So another of the attendees asking, do you think it's time for to call the Russians and the Chinese and ask for their cooperation? And he said, I'm very reticent for that. I think it's a double-edged sword. International cooperation will be ideal, but it will have to be handled very carefully because we do not want to show them too much. So how can you possibly reach some kind of like scientific breakthrough or understanding of what is possibly the most puzzling or confounding mystery in the history of humankind? What do you don't want to show what you get? Show me. Want to show me yours first before I show you mine? There is no possibility of advancement if people are like saying, no, I'm gonna keep my cards close to the vest, but let me see if I can take a peek at your game, to see who's going to win.
And to me, NASA is interesting because there are definitely some weird things NASA has photographed, and they just dismiss it, And it's like, okay, no, that does not fit your explanation whatsoever. Why don't you just acknowledge you found something and you don't know what it is, And I think the problem is because you get all these people who are like, well, if they don't know what it is, it must be aliens.
Yep. I hate to sound really just jaded, but this all just starts to sound to me like noise. I've said a long time ago that, like, if you want to do a roundtable on MJ12 or Roswell, I'm not the person that you call because I don't know that much about these topics because they've been so contaminated and there's been so much back and forth. I think it was Tim Banal who said recently, trying to keep abreast of this UFO stuff right now is like a full-time job. And I'm at the point where, I said my piece and we saw the sort of preliminary release, which I think is very telling. It's kind of exactly what I said with, wouldn't it be interesting if what Obama said is basically what the report said? And that's kind of what it looks like from this first shot across the bow, at least.
Yeah.
I kind of just want to wait and see what happens.
Well, obviously we'll come back to it at some point. It'll be interesting to see when we do the next UFO history show in next February where everything is.
I do think it's interesting that the Times changed. Do you see this, Seriah? The Times changed the headline.
Yes.
Mhm.
Do you remember what they changed it from?
Yes, they changed it from. Let's see here.
They changed it to something from report. It didn't prove the the existence of aliens, to something to the effect of they didn't prove it, but they cannot rule it out either.
We didn't say it's not aliens. So the original one was government finds no evidence that aerial sightings were alien spacecraft.
Right.
Which was changed to U.S. finds no evidence of alien technology in flying objects, but can't rule it out either.
Right.
And it was done. Well, I don't know when the original article went up, but it
went
was
up
done.
June 3rd, and then I don't know when I don't know when they changed it.
If memory serves, it was like the same day, I think.
Yeah, I think it was the same day.
So I mean, so that reeks to me of a hand slap of some sort.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, I know. That's the question, right?
I have the suspicion that one of the authors of this recent article was Helen Cooper, who was part of the first original New York Times article in 2017. So I don't know. Maybe one of her co-authors, maybe call her and say, "Hey, what the hell?"
Yeah.
We want people. We want to keep stringing people along. Your headline sounds like it's been settled.
It kind of felt like Helen Cooper was distancing herself from how the story has been progressing and evolving.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the NASA stuff that's interesting. Not even NASA. One of the most interesting videos that I don't think they've ever explained is the Russian probe they sent to Mars that looks like it gets shot out of the sky.
Yeah, the Phobos 2.
Yeah. And I mean, the Russians had no qualms about saying something shot our probe down. Because, I mean, you see this thing move in front of the probe and then fly right at the probe, and then they lose contact with it. So there's no natural object that should have been able to do that.
Well, the Russians have always been bolder in their claims about
everything.
Exactly, about everything, including claims of having found evidence of extraterrestrial life. Like, for example, someone in UFO Updates, this Facebook group, I think it was Kurt Collins, was gracious enough to share a very interesting PDF, which was a scan of a 1974 UFO magazine that I never heard of. It was called Probe. At least I think it was before the idea of probing as, the whole thing with the alien abduction, So it was an interesting coincidence. Anyway, among other things that were included in the magazine was this idea of some comment or quote by this Russian scientist Kardashev, and Kardashev is a name that will be familiar to people who are fans of science fiction because of this famous the Kardashev scale of advanced civilizations. Like Type 1 is the civilization that is capable of harnessing the energy of their home planets. Type 2, Type 3, whatever. And there was this quote saying that the Soviets had detected some kind of like radio signal, which they didn't have any doubt that was artificial and of extraterrestrial origin. And I was like, wow, why haven't I heard any of these before? Maybe possibly because their Western colleagues didn't take it seriously. Mm-hmm. But like I said, this is something that for a long time Soviets didn't care if the Western scientists gave credence to their claims, and that's why there was this kind of like a split between Western and Eastern civilizations, and that's when Soviet scientists were studying very, very controversial things like the human bioenergetic system and all these ideas that were related also with their psychic program,
Right.
and also all these studies that they did with their own psychics. What's the name of this woman? You can find those videos on YouTube. Even Robert Bigelow mentioned those when he was interviewed by Joe Rogan. Anyway, and I think a similar thing has also happened with Chinese scientists. How they do their thing, and they really don't care if they get any validation by Western science. I think that to them maybe it's even an asset that Western scientists don't take them seriously, because that leaves them the freedom to study these fields without the risk of having to compete with Western laboratories, which obviously will have far more resources at their disposal.
Yeah, there's something really interesting, and I don't know what it is, but this occurred. We were talking about that really bizarre case in Slack a couple of weeks ago about the alien case. I don't want to spoil it, and I don't want to go too deep in into the rabbit hole, because it's a pretty wild case that we had come across. We were talking about.
Who are you spoiling it for?
Well, I'm going to put it in my books. Right?
Oh, okay. All right.
But I know what you're talking about. Yes,
but it's also like a 15-minute. It's also like a 15-minute story too. So I don't want to not do it justice, but it basically involves like some real 1950s sci-fi alien stuff with transmissions from someone's dead father, and it's just a bonkers story, right? And there is a trend, and I've been wrestling with what to make of this in an honest way. I notice invariably when I go through, Albert Rosalis's Humanoid Database, that the most bonkers stories are always from, Russia / former USSR countries, Eastern Bloc countries, and a lot of Latin American countries. And I'm only half convinced it's because they're made up and sensational. Half of me also thinks that these cultures have maintained a timeline where they're just more open to these things, and have been more open to these things, so that they remain more fantastic, sort of along the lines of that comment that, we can get into that too if you want to talk about it, Red, but that comment that, the Russians never killed their witches, so they never really, so they had a head start on the U.S., right, when it came to the PSYOPs wars. And so I'm kind of go back and forth, like, is this just yellow journalism and sensationalist tabloid stuff, or are these cultures experiencing more bonkers stories because they've just had that in their life for a longer time period?
It's a very good question. And it might be a little of both.
Well, some of them, when was the fall of the Berlin Wall? I think we talked about this last time. 1989, 1990 or something like that, right? 91?
Yeah. Yes.
Right around that time, like, there are so many like absolutely fantastic humanoid stories that came out of the former USSR, and I don't know if that's like because it was a liminal time and when it was a time of transition, so the phenomena was attracted to it more, or whether these stories actually had a chance to get out because the Iron Curtain had fallen, or what. These questions keep me up at night, guys.
True.
But, I think, again, you're looking at both. I mean, it was a super transitional time for that area. So, yeah, I mean, more weird stuff is likely to happen. But also, we can hear these stories a lot easier now because the walls have fallen. Literally.
Yeah.
Some walls, obviously, there's obviously still the language barrier, which unfortunately still prevents us from learning from the cases that is happening in non-English countries, Slavic countries, and also the East Asian countries. What's happening in China, and obviously there's also the big firewall that's maintained by the Chinese government that prevents a real share of information between China and the rest of the world.
Now, Miguel, I would really value your opinion on this. There is a flavor to Mexican UFO reports, right? I mean, that's distinctly different than the American flavor, right? Would you say that?
There's a Latin American flavor. I don't know if it's strictly Mexican, but yeah, this is something that I've often talked about.
At one point, I thought you said that you didn't like the term Latin American, so I didn't use that term.
No, I have no problem with Latin America. That's the proper term.
Okay, I can't remember where I heard that then. I'm sorry. I must have get mixed up. Sorry. You never know nowadays, right?
Yeah, what I heard is the term Latin X.
Oh, okay, that's it. Okay, yeah.
That's
cosine.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, what we're saying is, I feel is at least with regards to Latin America, totally applicable. The idea of how in these cultures, the mix between folklore, religion, not only Catholic religion, but also the combination with indigenous religious traditions here in Mexico, like, for example, the shamanic traditions, and in other countries in Caribbean, Santeria, in Brazil, the Yoruba and Candomblé, and all that stuff. I've always maintained that one of the reasons why Latin American culture is more like open to these things that really are absorbed from a strictly Cartesian, logical frame of reference. This is what I choose to call magical realism, and I use that term, which is extracted from this trend in Latin American literature, which there were authors like Gabriel Garcia Marquez that used to write novels, like his most famous one, obviously, 100 Years of Solitude. And in 100 Years of Solitude, you see that he combines totally outrageous, fantastical things with the actual plot of the novel, which is these two families that have all these problems and all these characters, but at the same time, he has no qualms with having one of the characters that, for some reason, manifests white butterflies everywhere he goes. It's like, okay, because, and he never has to explain it. It's just, it just is.
I mean, but that's a way of living and a way of thinking that we just don't get in the States, or I guess like. When people do embrace that sort of manner of living in the States, people think of them as woo or cuckoo or something. Yeah.
In the West, people are obsessed with the mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
You need to explain the operating system behind a given phenomena. If you cannot explain it adequately, then people feel entitled to disregard it completely. Is this something that happens all the time when skeptics are trying to debate UFOs with believers? Believers say, okay, there's this case, and this is something that was, totally amazing. And the believer feels entitled to say, okay, but then how do you explain that the aliens comes from thousands of light years away, or how do you explain that they are able to defy gravity, or that or paralyze people, or why do you explain the rationale behind abductions, and why do ufologists need to explain all that? I mean, it's not like when you go and go to the doctor or the first time a medical physician described cancer, like they didn't explain, possibly 100% the mechanism behind, how the tumors grow inside us. They just say, well, this is cancer,
Yeah.
And I would say, hey, but can you cure it? No, I can't. Oh, then you are a fraud, and I don't believe it.
Yeah. And I feel like, when I was younger, I used to think that films that didn't really spell out how things worked or didn't spell out the mechanism were somehow subpar. I mean, the idea that I would have liked David Lynch. I mean, I couldn't even wrap my head around the Mothman Prophecies film. I thought it was
Really?
I thought it was bad. I mean, this is Josh reading about flesh and blood Bigfoot and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate the dream logic. I really like, tight Christopher Nolan clockwork-esque sort of films, where everything's tight as a drum. And I think that there's still a value in that. They're still really interesting, but I think that there's something to be said for crafting a little neat little box that all has its gears fitting in the right places. I think that's really that really takes talent. But as I get older, I find myself drawn more to films involving dream logic, and I think that that's kind of the way that I've become with a lot of paranormal encounters when I read them. Like if it has that sort of dream logic, I'm more inclined to think that it's genuine than as opposed to something having all its loose ends tied up.
Right. Well, I mean, so if someone's going to make up a story, they're not going to make up a crazy story. If they're intentionally trying to hoax you, they're going to make up something that they believe sounds real.
Bobla, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, because it's dream logic, it's, if you don't accept the fact that some of these things involve altered states of consciousness and such, it doesn't make any sense. It's when you realize that the reality we all share is maybe not even the primary reality, that these things start to make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the one of the most overlooked answers is that altered state. It's a big part. It's a big part of the project that I'm working on, so it's really at the front of mind. But the alien abductions look like fairyland abductions, look like NDEs, look like most DMT trips, look like dreams, look like shamanic awakenings. I mean, they all have so many markers. That there's something there. I'm not saying that they are all the same thing, but there's something there that that's trying to tell us this is what lies at the core of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's almost go ahead.
Or conversely, this is the way that the human psyche reacts when it encounters something that is outside the normal, quote unquote, frame of reference. So I don't know. It's going back to the series of our dear friend Greg Bishop. You encounter something that you don't know where to put it inside your little tidy mental boxes.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I'm 100% fine with that as an explanation. That's something that I think gets lost on a lot of people who say, Josh thinks that it might just all be archetypes, but that's still borderline paranormal for me.
Oh yeah,
right.
That we're wired to work in that sort of way. Yeah.
Well, and we live in a culture that wants to label everything. That's the other problem. Like everything has to fit into a box, as you just said with like when you mentioned Greg, and so much of this stuff crosses those boxes so easily.
Yeah.
I had
that if we label something, that we have solved it. Oh, that's just a placebo effect. Okay, just because you put in a name doesn't mean you managed to explain how the mind can heal the body.
Right. And that part of it's almost ignored. It's just kind of like, oh, look, these people who didn't get the real drug had the same benefits, if not better results, than the people who got the real drug. Well, that's just the placebo effect.
Yeah, just placebo drives me, quote unquote, just placebo drives me up an effing wall.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll ignore the implications that maybe the medicine really isn't doing anything, and it's the belief in the medicine that's doing something.
Yeah.
I had someone recently ask me about the big UFO sighting I had over Cayuga Lake, and he said, well, what do you think that was? And my honest answer is I have no idea, because I'm not going to put a label on it. I don't know what it was. I don't have any data that can give me an answer to that other than it was a very bright bunch of lights. And I can't think of anything that fits what I saw, like any conventional thing that fits what I saw. But the minute I think you put a label on it is the minute you stop looking at all of those things. You know, now it's in a box, and you don't compare it to things that aren't in the same box.
Right. Yeah.
So it would be reasonable for someone to say, well, I think I saw a spaceship. And then it's like, you know, if I say then, well, you know, but it happened right in a very liminal part of my life. Well, why would you just see a spaceship at a liminal point of your life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I keep on coming back to, like, if it's aliens, folks, it's really weird aliens. It's aliens that care about your spiritual, like that to me would be weirder than it being, you know, solely spirit phenomena.
Right.
Would be that it's like it would be weirder to me than just solely spirit phenomena or just solely archetypes or time slips. It will be weirder to me that it's flesh and blood aliens who are obsessed with our spirituality and can somehow contact our dead. That's weirder to me.
Yes.
If it is aliens, then I dare to say that it is closer, to use pop culture references, then it is closer to Jack Kirby than Gene Roddenberry. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had, and the other thing that people do, especially people who don't know a large amount about this stuff. I have a friend who, you know, he watches Ancient Aliens and stuff like that. And at some point UFOs came up and someone else said something about aliens. He goes, oh, they're not aliens. They're ultraterrestrials or however he phrased it. And I went, you're just replacing one unknown term with another.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something that really does drive me up a wall. Man, it's like the cranky old man hour here. But that's one of the reasons that I'm so hesitant to say that anything is interdimensional, because it's people say that like it's a place.
Yes.
You know, people say that like it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Loki slips into the time variance authority like he did on the first episode of the Loki show. Like that's not the way dimensions work. Like a true multiple dimension would make our heads explode. I don't know if we can really even wrap our heads around the way that it would. Like if you're living in Flatland, how do you wrap your head around a sphere? Like I don't think you can.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're not set up to process that stuff.
Yeah. We don't even have the language for it.
Right.
It defies language even.
Shout out to Greg Bishop right there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, that wasn't intentional?
No, it was completely intentional. I was being a smartass.
Okay, good. All right. And when you say interdimensional, are we talking about another parallel world, a slightly different world from this one, something completely, you know, I mean, the word itself is so ambiguous.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, Seriah, but like this, I mean, it's the other world. That's all it is. It's the other world in materialist clothing. Like that's all it is. We just completely swapped out an older concept that we've lived with for time immemorial for a concept that is poorer fitting that we've had for like 2 centuries or something. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, Yeah, that's what bugs me about it. Is because it's just we already had a term for this. We're making it more complicated than it needs to be in some ways.
Now, the ancient tradition Laird Scanton writes about, if he's correct on his interpretations, is kind of an interesting view of the other world, that we're sort of like connected to another universe. And, one universe has perfect knowledge and inability to act, and the other has the ability to act but imperfect knowledge. And the one with perfect knowledge is trying to communicate with the one that can act. I mean, all right, that would be really weird and might be exactly what's happening.
I use that a lot, though. I think that there's personally for me, and the way that I conceptualize the paranormal, I think that there's something to that description, that Dogon description.
Yeah. There's that, and there's also, just the fact that John Keel points out in the Eighth Tower, that this stuff seems to move from like non-visible color spectrums, So it could be that some of this stuff is here all the time. It's not interdimensional. It's just beyond our senses. Mm-hmm. It's vibrating at a level we don't actually perceive or interact with. And I've created silence.
No, I was just thinking about this because, I was thinking about the fact that the pineal gland is an eye, and it regulates melatonin based on light, and you have these anomalous lights and all the paranormal, and and how we've often pontificated on whether or not that's like the purest form of the other. And I kind of wonder if that's not what we see going on. There's these that is like the naked form of the other that operates on some spectrum that kicks in the pineal gland to create endogenous DMT, because in 2013 they proved that the pineal gland of rats contains some DMT. And if that's not what's happening, that's the unskinned version of the other. It hits us with light that dumps DMT, and then then we start co-creating, and we get what we get.
That's a really interesting idea.
I feel like I've said it before, but maybe not.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's sort of where I sit right now with a lot of this stuff. Because it does seem like the lights are a common thing across everything.
Yes, yeah. Well, we did how many shows on lights?
Yeah, the only thing with that is I don't know if that's a realistic. I mean, how long does melatonin production take, and how quickly would that DMT, would the DMT dump be fast enough? You know what I mean?
So I know when I had Strassman on, he was saying that they weren't sure that DMT was actually created in the pineal gland. There was some evidence that it was actually created in the lungs, but the pineal gland is what allows it into the brain. So there may always be some level of DMT flowing through us, and the pineal gland just regulates how much of that can get into our system. Oh,
yeah, that's a good way to look at it too, actually. Yeah.
So I don't know if they've gotten any. It's been a few years since he's been on, so I don't know if any of that has changed.
It does seem that the pineal gland is somehow related to DMT. I mean, that's one of those things where there's so much circumstantial evidence across so many different cultures that I really do think that there's something to it. Now, whether or not the fluoride in your drinking water is calcifying your pineal gland, that's a different story. But
I mean, to be fair, there's no good reason to put fluoride in the drinking water.
Oh, I didn't say that. I'm just. Yeah, I heard something the other day that was talking about, could we decrease the rate of suicide by putting lithium into the drinking water?
Oh yeah, there's an idea.
Yeah, right. What could possibly go wrong? But apparently, in states that have more lithium naturally occurring in their water have less suicides.
Sure.
So I don't know.
But why does all the solutions we have, why is it always drugs? Why isn't it like fix the culture that creates people to want to kill themselves?
Oh, I agree. I mean, this is something that, you'll hear a lot of times that that poverty is the driver of crime. But if you look at a lot of really poor, especially, indigenous neighborhoods, but like if you look at a lot of a lot of poor neighborhoods and places, it seems that you can have poor places that aren't filled with crime. It's really the deprivation of meaning in people's lives that is the primary catalyst for them to, inflict cruelty upon others.
Interesting.
And I think that's really interesting. And that's one of the reasons that, like, I do go so hard against materialism, is I feel like whether they intend to or not, a lot of times these materialist models do strip some meaning out of people's lives. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to run out and go be a Christian or, convert to Islam or anything. But I'm saying, like, at the end of the day, the materialist paradigm says that, nothing really matters. And when you die, you're gone. And again,
Right.
I'm also not saying that there aren't moral atheists out there. I know they are. But I do think having that belief in something greater gives you at least some sense of peace and makes you second guess how you treat those around you, for certain.
Well, that and feeling a connection to something more than yourself. And it doesn't, there you can be religious without being spiritual. And I don't, and for some people that's fine, but you can also be spiritual without being religious, or you can be both. Or neither. I mean, there's two, religion and spirituality are two different things.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, so now that the conversation is veering to this direction, maybe I could riff for a few minutes in some things that I've been thinking about.
Okay.
A lot in these last few years with regards to how, I don't know, we've been dealing with the UFO phenomenon for decades, but obviously society has addressed this in different manners. Like, for example, in the 1960s, I think we could have an argument that the 1960s was the apex of Western civilization in regards to quality of life, expectabilities, and hope for the future. Like people back in those days, like the boomer years, they expected things to always get better and better. They have no reason not to. And here comes the UFO question, and the majority of people will say, well, I mean, who knows? Maybe there's ETs, but I don't have time because I need to mow the lawn, or I need to
get to the disco.
Yeah, I need to water my petunias or whatever. Like people were comfortable. People were content. Obviously, some people will say, well, no, because there were also a lot of a great part of the population that were fighting for their rights, fighting for equality of opportunity, whatever. But there was a certain level of stability with regards to economy, jobs, and all of that. Now let's jump to 2021, in which there's a lot of people. I think I'm not lying when I'm saying that there's a lot of people who feel this sense of discontent, who feel that we are living in the last throngs of an failing and aging system, and that aging system is capitalism as we currently know it. People under 40, they don't have the expectations to live better than their parents did. In fact, they expect not to. Like owning a house to someone that is 30 years or younger is a pipe dream.
Yeah.
It's easier to believe in extraterrestrials coming to our planet than it is to believe that you will be able to retire like your grandparents did. So I'm thinking about that, how on top of all these problems piling upon us, the economic system's collapsing, and while it's collapsing, is becoming more and more unfair and unequal. Like Jeff Bezos says, Jeff Bezos wants to go to space. Oh, well, yeah, bitch, because if you haven't paid your taxes in how many years,
Yeah.
no wonder you can afford going to space. And on top of that, environmental decline, climate change, and all of that. And on top of that, this pandemic and scientists saying, well, better get used to it because this is the new normal. This is just an advance of things to come. So on top of that, it's almost like one of those memes that have been circulating on social media of the alien landing and in front of a guy and the alien saying, hey, and the other and the human saying, hey, and the alien saying, aren't you like amazed or something? And the human said, man, I've been through a lot lately.
Yeah. This year after this year, yeah.
Yeah, So I don't know. Some people say, well, it's by design, that this is the perfect moment.
It's absurd by design.
Exactly. So this is like, after all we've been through, the fact that the government is also telling us, oh, by the way, there are aliens. People are so overwhelmed and say, oh, yeah, whatever, dude. Because if they had told us, like, in the 70s, it wouldn't be like, oh, my God.
Well,
yeah.
And to be fair, the government did not tell us there are aliens, just that there's some things they don't know what are.
True.
Or at least officially don't know what are. It doesn't mean they don't know what they are. It's just that the need to know may not be there.
Yeah, but admitting that level of ignorance is something that, to be honest, maybe even in Blue Book, they were kind of like saying, oh, yeah, by the way, there was 700 cases that, we don't know what those are.
Yeah.
But we are sure that if we had more time and more resources, we could have fully solved all those too. And now, someone could say, after that, they're still saying, you know what, we have all these new technology, amazing sensors and all, and we still don't know what these things are.
Yeah.
And it always stays one step ahead of the tech.
Yes. Of course it does. Which, creates another reason as to why. Is it partially because we see it that way? Or does it project that way?
The phenomenon being one step ahead of us.
I mean, where my headspace is nowadays, I feel like it's because it's us. And I don't mean like it's us, like it's our technology. I mean like it's us, like it's a part of us.
Right, yes.
That's just where my head is now.
And I think that is definitely part of the whole web of explaining this stuff, is understanding that we are in part responsible for its existence to some degree.
Yeah, I think that we three are of the agreement that humans play a role in the whole this, to the point that I don't know if there will be a UFO phenomenon without human consciousness. Now,
right.
There are all these discussions about, the Chinese have also admitted they have their own UAP task force. And they're also now using artificial intelligence in order to study it. And this is something that even here in Western world, people are saying, we think that is a good idea too. We're also going to implement AI algorithms in order to study databases and maybe to try to teach, drones, how to discern between a true UFO and a false positive. And makes me wonder what will happen if all the Air Force of the world will say, you know what, we need to replace our fallible meatbag pilots with swarms of intelligent drone systems, automated platforms that can stay airborne for days at a time, that can work in coordination with satellites and the like, networks down in the ground. So we're going to replace all the Top Gun jet fighters like Fravor, who are also, by the way, confused when they see these tic-tacs in the sky. We're going to replace them with AI-based technology. And makes me wonder, would it be something like what happened, all these folklore is like Evan Wentz, that they compile all the stories about the fae folk in Celtic countries, and all these people who told them, yeah, well, the problem is that the moment that the factories and the railroads started to encroach on the land and invade the forest, that's when the fae started to recede, and they started to fade away, and that's when we stopped seeing them as frequently as when we were seeing them in the times of our ancestors. Right. Will it be the same in our skies when instead of steel railroads and power lines, we'll have like all these invisible Wi-Fi networked, aerial avenues where automatic flying cars on all these drones that will be swarming up all around us and delivering our Amazon purchases and our tacos and everything else. Would it be that when the phenomenon will also recede from our skies?
I mean, that's an idea that I've been playing with, and I think that let's face it, the outer space, other planets, these have all come to fill that sort of other world role because we've mapped everything, right? Yeah. I know that there's some places in, the Pacific Northwest, and there's some places in the Himalayas, and there's some places in the outback that there's probably been like maybe 5 human feet ever. Right. But more or less we have mapped the world. There is no real undiscovered country.
The bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, but I mean, you're just reinforcing my point here, right?
Right.
That this is where things come from. This is where mystical things happen. This is where magical things happen. Outer space, under the ocean.
Yep.
And we push those undiscovered countries to the margins. And I would assume that, the ideas like multidimensionality, whatever it means, for better or worse, I think that those ideas would gain even more prevalence because we're convinced that we're not alone, right?
Yeah.
So if in 500 years we've conquered the solar system and we start pushing out and we still haven't seen anything, I think as we continue to push out and we continue to map, we'll think to ourselves, dimensions. And then who knows, maybe we'll discover dimensions and they'll be just as barren as anywhere else. And we'll be like, psychedelics or whatever. I think that we'll always, not that I don't think that that's something out there is populated with an intelligence, but like, I think if we keep on coming up empty in our explorations to find companions, I think we'll keep on pushing those companions further ahead of our expectations, just in the exact same way that the UFO phenomena recontextualizes itself and stays ahead of our technology.
Okay. All right. I know what I was going to say. Early on, probably first year of the show, I had Albert Taylor on, and he was creating robots to do ghost hunting.
All right.
Yeah, and I tried to get him to come back on and talk some more about it. He did have a TV show he was pushing, but no one was interested. I
remember this. I remember the show that you did. Yeah.
Because he also wrote a book on out-of-body experiences. And then he had all because he he made robots for NASA, and so he was building robots to go out and ghost hunt. And I asked him, because I always wondered, like, does this stuff need a person there to manifest? And he said no, he was picking stuff up, completely abandoned houses with these like drone-like robots walking around and recording when they picked things up. They were picking things up in these haunted locations.
But my next question would be: they were still sent out there with intent, right?
Right, and
So,
at some point somebody is looking at them, and we're assuming
Yeah,
that
exactly.
time, works in a linear fashion.
Yeah, closing the loop, closing the consciousness loop.
Yeah. So he was thinking about, and I don't know if he ever did it, but he was thinking about making them so that they could wander around the woods and look for Bigfoot.
I am the Squatch Finder 5000.
But I mean, when you're saying you're making AI, to discern like our technology from UFOs.
Yeah.
Well, so this is so many questions. I can't remember who it was that said that they thought it would be really interesting if we get sentient AI. It might have been you, Miguel. We get sentient AI.
Jeff Ritzman.
Okay, and yeah, that's right. And the AI comes online and it says, "Okay, that's you, and that's you, and who are these other people in the room?" And we're
Right.
like, "Wait, what other people? There are no other people."
Yeah, it was Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the late Jeff Ritzman.
Which kind of reminds me of my other dream scenario that it would be a great sci-fi, a great start to a sci-fi short probably, is aliens land and we rush up to the craft and we say, "Oh my goodness, we're glad you finally stopped and said hello. We've been seeing you in our skies for years, and you've been contacting us and we're glad that you finally made official contact." And the aliens look at us and go, "Oh, you guys experienced that too?"
Right. Oh, that wasn't us.
Just us. Yeah.
Going back to other weird, and I feel like this stuff all kind of connects. Like back in the late 1800s, you had all these people looking at Mars, and they were seeing canals. But yet we get to Mars, and get better telescopes and stuff, and all the canals are gone.
Yeah.
So what were they seeing? Because it wasn't like one person saw them. Numerous people saw them, mapped them, but yet they're not there.
Oh, so you mean that aside from Percival Lowell, other people were actually seeing the canals?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, I thought that's
I don't-
really news to me, because I really thought it was just
I could be
him
wrong.
and the Italian guy Schiaparelli, from which he got the idea of the canali. But that's when that mistranslated the word from channel to canal, which canal denotes artificiality. But I don't know. It may be.
I thought they actually saw some stuff too, but
okay.
And of course, anything like that just gets dismissed. And it's like, but you can't just throw it out. I mean, they were seeing something. It may not have been what they thought they were seeing, but what were they seeing? Or the transmissions we picked up. I know Keel talks about like a transmissions from that people were picking up from astronauts that didn't exist, that were like dying in space or something. Or was it Tesla who picked up what he thought were Martian transmissions?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I mean, none of this stuff has been really explained. It's just kind of like, oh, they were just wrong, and it's like, but what were they hearing then?
Yeah. I mean, it's the typical half-hearted dismissive hand wave, like, oh, it was just nothing, that we get so often from the establishment.
And I mean, it's hard to say how morphic reality really is, because what are the chances there is a freaking moon around, is it Saturn, that looks like the Death Star?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
I mean, and is that because I don't know, there was some retro causality and George Lucas happened to like, oh, okay, so that came out and George Lucas went, oh my God, it looks just like the Death Star, and that retro causally caused him to design the Death Star that way, 30 years earlier.
This reminds me of something, because I've always found it really fascinating that the moon is the right size that it is for eclipses, and
right,
and right. all those other moon statistics, right? But But if you talk to a lot of reductionists, they'll say that it's a fallacy to find that wondrous because we wouldn't exist without that being here. So it's a prerequisite for our existence. And while I kind of understand that to a certain degree, I had a friend of mine who put it a really interesting way. He said, "Look, all I know is that I can take my cell phone apart, take all the chips out, like literally take it apart component by component, place it in a Ziploc bag, and I can shake that sucker for 1 billion years, and it's not going to make a cell phone."
Right.
And I always thought that was a really elegant, interesting way of putting it.
So there are ancient records that apparently imply that the moon did not exist at a point.
I have not heard this.
Yeah, that was in Who Built the Moon. They quote a bunch of very old texts that talk about a time before the moon.
Well, I knew that birds didn't exist, but...
Oh, right, yeah, birds aren't real.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know, I've never read the book that Who Built the Moon, but I do know that those kind of ideas, oh yeah, there was a time when there was no moon, it was also picked up by this crazy German guy during the age of the Nazis who had this idea of the eternal life theory, the idea that there's been several moons that have risen and fallen, and every time that it falls, it's like a new age for mankind and all of that. But like I said, this is something that was intermingled with Nazis' racist ideology.
Yeah.
So probably one of the reasons why people don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Fair enough.
Nowadays,
Yeah. And also so we've been able to scientifically show, although if I'm not mistaken, there's not actually enough time for life to have spontaneously arisen here. And they don't actually know how that would have happened anyway. They're just it's just kind of like, oh, everything was just right and poof, life. But that's one of the things supporting the panspermia idea. But also, all of our calculations have been made based on the moon being there.
right.
So like, has anyone ever tried to say, okay, could all of this exist without the moon?
I mean, I don't... From my understanding, it couldn't, but...
Well, that's my understanding, too, but I feel like they're going with the prerequisite of the moon has always been there, so... Thus...
Therefore, yeah.
Because we're looking for life on other planets, and we're and we're not looking for planets with moons like ours.
I mean, we are. I feel like we are tied. I mean, like, look, you look at the things that the human body goes through in outer space.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the least. It's the least conducive to our existence of any environment that we know. Like, it's just to the extent that I think that it might be a major barrier for interstellar travel. Like, it's that bad.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And so I guess what I'm by saying that, like, we need a lot of the things on Earth, even beyond. We don't normally conceptualize needing gravity, right, to survive. Like, that's not like food, water, air, sunlight. It's not even like sunlight, right? It's like, oh, you need gravity to survive? You can just take it for granted, right? So I kind of wonder if the moon isn't one of those things as well. That is, it's just, yeah, that there's if not us directly, there are other things in the ecosystem that would basically cause a complete collapse of all life without the moon. That's the way I personally feel. So
well, I think if you took the moon out now, yeah, life on Earth would self-destruct. I mean, we're connected to it. It's part of our ecosystem. Just like if you changed the sun in any major way, everything would go haywire.
Right. So you're saying that there could be a before the moon, and it was fundamentally different than what we know now.
Right.
I
do think there is. I don't remember if there's a theory in the electric universe, and I don't necessarily support it, but I find it fascinating. that we were once that Saturn was once our other sun, and that Earth was what belonged to Saturn's star system, and eventually got brought into the star system it is now, and everything like electrically balanced out. And I don't know if the moon is a part of that. I mean, the idea is, to me, seems very far-fetched. It's taken from a lot of mythology and stuff like that, and I've never looked that deep into it. I did have Walt Thornhill on talking a little bit about it, because I almost feel like, okay, the electric universe is a really interesting idea, but this is almost a step too far, and I think if people start taking the EU stuff seriously and then they hear that, they're like, okay, no, this is nonsense, you know?
Yeah.
But there are two different aspects of it. Like, the EU stuff can still be accurate, even if that particular theory isn't.
I mean, it's this idea that what gives you permission to entertain or to say, no, that is, okay, you're speculating, but that is a science-based speculation, or say, no, that's too far out. Like, I was discussing the SU conference last weekend, earlier in this podcast, and one of the speakers gave a presentation about dark matter, and one of his ideas is that, well, what if aliens use dark matter as a fuel? It's like, well, this is like one of the most abundant things in the universe. What if they are smart enough to like make use of it, and exploit it? And one will say, well, first of all, you don't even know what dark matter is, and now you're just saying that the aliens are using it as fuel.
Yeah.
But if someone had invited, a proponent of the electric universe theory to this conference to give some kind of lecture, maybe we'll say, well, this guy is a crackpot. Why are you inviting him?
Yeah.
I said, well, listen to what these guys have to say. And this is the eternal discussion, who is right, who is not, who is going too far, who is making grounded assumptions. One of the other proponents of one of the other speakers in this conference was trying to reconcile the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox with UFO sightings. Something that Frank Drake probably would have a heart attack if someone would have, done that. So he said, well, for this probabilistic modeling, I use 10 assumptions about intelligent civilization. Says, dude, what gives you the right to make 10 unprovable assumptions?
That's it's only about 10 assumptions too many. I mean,
Exactly.
But yet, when you deal with dark matter, so much of that is assumptions.
Yeah.
And that's accepted science.
Well, I mean, one of these guys, like I said, was a dark matter expert.
Right.
And he actually, I was thinking about you, Seriah, when he was saying, and by the way, we know that dark matter exists, and it's not just a reason of us not understanding gravity. Like I said, Seriah will be asking questions here in this part.
I would like to see the proof that dark matter exists.
Well, he gave a few, and I think that I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because it was compelling, and I like his presentation.
What did he give?
One of the things that I asked him is, okay, so you're telling us that we don't know what 95% of the universe is made of, not only dark matter but also dark energy. So what makes other scientists uphold the so-called mediocrity principle of saying that there's nothing particularly special about our position in the universe? I mean, aren't we made of like the gold of the universe, the 5%?
Yeah.
Of everything that's out there? And the guy say, well, I never thought about that before. That's an interesting way of putting it. Nevertheless, he said, I still think that the mediocrity principle upholds because that 5% is very evenly distributed everywhere we look into the universe, But yeah, I mean, all these assumptions, like the mediocrity principle. Oh, there's nothing special about our place in the universe. This idea that ever since Copernicus, scientists keep telling us, no, you're not special, you're nothing, you're insignificant, you don't mean anything. And even, or reaching to Richard Dawkins and say, you don't even have consciousness, you don't even have free will, you're just a meatless robot, a meat robot. And maybe this is something that scientists have taken too far. This idea, okay, yeah, maybe we're not the kings of creation, as the fathers of the Bible used to tell us, but maybe we're not just that insignificant either. I mean, we are here and we're living star stuff, thinking about our place in the universe. That to me is pretty significant.
So, was any of his proof of dark matter not based on math?
The guy is an experimental physicist. Not only is about equations. This guy was not about equations. This guy is about experiments. These experiments that are being conducting right now, on Earth in order to detect dark matter, and also, the things that they have observed through telescopes.
Right. Way that, but those things are basically made on the assumption that there is dark matter.
Look, I'm not equipped to right now.
That's okay. That's all right. That's all right.
And in fact, the guy was cool. The guy gave the best presentation in this conference, right?
I'm interested. That's the thing.
And actually, yeah, I think that maybe we could contact him and say, hey, would you care to appear in this podcast and talk about, dark matter and talk about aliens and all that stuff? And I'm willing to bet he will accept.
In Futurama, they use dark matter as fuel, right?
Sure. I mean, this guy is a big fan of Star Trek, and that is one of the reasons why he thinks about that. But not only that, he also had another rather more interesting idea of thinking that maybe there are instances of natural clusters of dark matter which could explain some UFO sightings.
Okay.
This is like another variant of the Earth light theory, the idea of that there are some UFOs that are not necessarily like intelligently controlled. There's just some kind of like phenomenon that we have yet to understand. Yeah. And one of the reasons why I say, well, maybe it's dark matter is because we know that all these UFO manifestations, they don't leave any trace of energy signature, no radiation, no radioactivity, nothing like that. So, well, okay, if you leave all of that out, what does it leave you? Well, maybe they're using this stuff that we still have failed to detect, which is dark matter.
Okay.
And I think that was a really interesting idea. And also, This is a guy who I feel he was very open-minded to say, well, we keep thinking about this one theory to explain UFOs. What if all the theories are correct? What if it's a melange of time travelers, ultraterrestrials, ETs, denizens of the inner Earth, and also someone who has a base on the ocean? What if it's all of that? And I think, okay, this is a guy who is more open-minded than most.
Right. I mean, look at the ocean. It's like imagine like seeing something in the ocean, being like, I theorize that there are these things called porpoises, and whenever you see something in the ocean, it's a porpoise. And it's like, well, you got porpoises, you got fish, you got pinnipeds, you've got the cetaceans, you've got
monsters,
boats. It'd be monsters, but you've got boats, you've got submarines, you've got natural phenomena, rocks. You know.
Yeah, I mean, even the other ideas that we have when we talk about, for example, ayahuasca trips and the things that shamans see in the other world that we were discussing. You know, I don't think that the shamans say, "Oh yeah, there's just spirits." To them, it's a whole ecosystem of discarnate beings. You know, as rich and varied as the Amazon jungle that they inhabit. You know.
All right. Well, we are about out of time. Josh, where can people find you?
JoshuaCutchin.com, JoshuaCutchin.com.
Wow, that was a very professional delivery.
Thank you.
And your next book will be out in a week or so?
No, I'm like 69,000 words in, and I think I'm like not quite to the halfway point. It's a biggie. I'm actually toying with the idea of publishing the bibliography separately, like some big academic books would.
Just to keep it from being
800 pages. Yeah, pretty much. But I'm really excited about it. It's the closest thing to Josh's current theory of all things paranormal.
Nice. And Red Pill, you can be found a couple of places.
Yes, you can find me at the Daily Grail, www.dailygrail.com. We have a Patreon page. You can support us. We will greatly appreciate it. I also have my personal website, absurdbydesign.com, where you can see my artwork, design covers, a few links to interviews like this one, and a few other things.
All right. Awesome. Thank you both.
It was a pleasure.
You're welcome.
I want to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons. Without you, this show simply wouldn't be possible. And I want to give an extra special shout out for those of you pledging $10 or more. Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Eric Hervin, Tim, 100th Monkey Project, Ad Noctum, Patricia Giaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, Alfred Tuttle, American Rambler, Andy McNamara, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Cash, Charles Davis, Chris Ernst, Craig Cisternos, Greg Parmenter, David Moore, Denise Sarek, Diane B., Dominic O'Malley, Edu Camahort, Empty K, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, J. Otto Bullitt, Leela Malden, Andrew Maines, James Lattimore, Joanna Rojas, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Christian L., Linz Jackson K., Luke Osborne, Stefan Javonisky, Jim and Sophie, Mark H. Brady, Matt in Delaware, Matthew Sproul, Maddie, Nagatha Christie, Patricia W., Ray Benedeno, Reichard Stark, Roger Gonzalez, Sam Sharon, Sedgder, Stone Wilderness, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, 36 Dingo, Vincent Trewell, Walker, William Powell, William Lovelace, and Ren Collier. Thank you all so very, very much. All right, I'll have some Patreon stuff up for people later in the week. I still have another piece, a video from last week's show for patrons as well. If you want to support the show, if you want to become a patron, it's only $3 a month. And you get extra content all month long. You get the shows early and other neat things here and there. You can also support the show by rating us on, iTunes and whatever podcatcher you happen to listen to, preferably a good rating. And you can pick up merch at wheredidtheroadgo.com. And if you want to become a patron, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com and click on the big Patreon link right at the top. Or you can give a one-time donation by clicking on the PayPal link. And I know some of you have done that and have been doing that for years, and thank you so much for that. To take you out tonight, this is a song with a story. So this song is 2019, recorded live at the Last Exit January 12th, 2020, one of the last bands we had play live in studio on the Last Exit for the Lost. The song is called 2019, spelled out by Zero Mean. And I use Podcast Addict to get my podcasts, and I like it a lot. And one day, I was about to go out to mow the lawn and, put on a podcast, and suddenly sound started coming from my pocket. And I didn't know what it was, and I took the phone out, and this was playing. It didn't have any data. I don't remember seeing any kind of title. There were just a couple of dates, and neither was 2019. And I did not have Podcast Addict open, and this is not on my phone. So I don't know where this came from. This song only exists in the show folder from that week for Last Exit. I never put it in the files that I use for the show. It's never been on my phone. I have no idea how it ended up in Podcast Addict. I didn't know what it was. I listened to it. I went, well, this is pretty cool. And then before I got to the end, I went back to the beginning and I dropped it to my computer. I tried searching for it. I tried trying to find out where it came from, but it wouldn't give me any info. I tried downloading it to the phone. It wouldn't let me do that. So eventually I recorded it to the computer because I noticed it did say Zero Mean in little letters in the corner, and I went, okay, so it must be a Zero Mean song, and I don't know the Zero Mean songs that well, especially some of the new ones. So Fidget, who is basically Zero Mean, is also my co-host on Last Exit a lot of times, and she was coming over that week, so when she came over, I had dropped it to the computer, and when it got done playing on Podcast Addict, it disappeared. When I recorded the entire thing to the computer, it disappeared. It's not anywhere on my phone or Podcast Addict now. And I played it for her, and for a moment, she's like, I don't know what song this is. And then she realized it was the one song that she couldn't remember how to play, and she had practiced the next day, and she had been listening to a rehearsal version of it, which sounded very different than this live version from 2020. Which kind of blew her mind because it's the one Zero Mean song she's been listening to for like 2 days. And it just randomly appeared on my phone in a way that it really shouldn't be able to. I don't even know how to. I don't even know if you can load songs into Podcast Addict. So that's the story. It's a weird one, and I'm going to play you that song. I'm going to play you 2019, the live version from The Last Exit for the Lost. My music show, which is www.thelastexit.org. This is January 12th, 2020, Zero Mean with the song 2019. I'll see you next time.
You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always